Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to Season 9 of Shameless Cashgrab. You may have noticed that my hair is green again. My birthday was recently, and I've started dyeing my hair on my birthday as a thing. I did green last year, and you may be thinking that I'm doing green this year because this is the season we are doing Robin Hood movies. I still need to get the plastic wrap off this thing. That is not the reason I did it, actually. It's because I did not realize until after I'd already paid for it that I'd actually bought a 2-pack of the green hair dye that you saw on me from last year's videos that were filmed around this time. So anyway, yeah. Oh, and the fingernails, cheap polish Family Dollar. I have a problem with chewing my fingernails, and I've been told that doing this actually helps, and so far so good. It's been a couple of days since I put this on, and I haven't bitten my nails once. So anyway, we are starting off with, from 1946, The Bandit of Sherwood Forrest. Do I recognize any of the names on here? Not off the top of my head, but I might have an idea who some of these people are once I've actually watched it. So, yeah. Let's go ahead, jump into Season 9, jump into The Bandit of Sherwood Forest. And I have now watched The Bandit of Sherwood Forest from 1946. Our very brief plot summary comes courtesy of Letterboxd. Speaking of, if you would like me to include a link to my Letterboxd profile in the show notes going forward, let me know. Robin Hood's swashbuckling son comes to the rescue when England's boy king is captured by the evil, power-hungry William of Pembroke. Short and to the point. Shame the movie wasn't like that. Anyway, this is a first for me. I've never seen a Robin Hood film where the character had children at all, let alone one old enough to follow in his footsteps. Well, there might have been kids in some epilogues here and there. I could be wrong about that. Anyway, it is amusing to me that this is the film that kicks off a set with the word Origins in the title. Because, it's called Robin Hood Origins, so you'd think it would focus on Robin Hood, and Robin Hood himself does have a decent-sized role in this picture, but anyway. This movie is apparently based off of a novel simply titled The Son of Robin Hood by Paul A. Castleton. I have not even heard of this book before, so don't expect any comparisons. If you really want to know, become a patron for Dominic Noble of Lost in Adaptation and have him do it. The movie opens with triumphant music as a large group of men on horses with bows and arrows are called to action with horns. And I think this movie has set the record for the most number of horses on screen in any movie I've watched for the show. And Michael Cimino is nowhere to be found, so safe to assume none of these horses were blown up at any point. And by the way, when I say there are a lot of horses, there are a lot of horses. The screen cap labeled Image 2, if the editor would be so kind as to place that back up real quick. This shot here, it does not convey at all just how many friggin' horses and extras with bows and wearing green outfits there are in this scene. This movie had a budget behind it, at least by late 40s standards. Kind of a pity they didn't spend any of that budget on sets and actors, but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, why are all these men here, and who summoned them, you may be asking? Well, the man who summoned this small army of archers is a much older Robin Hood, and he launches right into a as you know speech, basically recapping a movie that we have not seen because this is not a direct sequel to any of the prior Robin Hood movies that had been released before this point, though the makers seem to hope you think it is. After all this exposition, he tells everyone that a new tyrant has arisen, much like the one they defeated before. So basically, I'm watching Robin Hood The Force Awakens.
Actually, that's not fair. That's really not fair at all. The Force Awakens was good. So this new tyrant, the William of Pembroke from the plot summary, has called a meeting, and Robin, now an earl, does not know how it will go. But if William of Pembroke tries to take away any of the rights granted in the Magna Carta, they will need to take up swords again. We are introduced to this movie's versions of the more well-known of the Merry Men, Little John, Alan a Dale, etc., and we are told that Robin's son has been summoned and has been trained since he was 10 for an event such as this. Excuse me, I can talk. No pressure there, I'm sure. Robin gets to the castle, which is a fairly nicely done matte painting, and walks into the meeting already in progress. William is griping about the Magna Carta and how it was accepted by a weak king in an act of cowardice, or some such tosh. Fairly typical conservative stuff, really, though I doubt the people writing this movie realized that's what they were doing. Also, considering how in the wide shots William's mouth doesn't seem to be moving when he talks, he's not only an authoritarian, but also a ventriloquist. Anyway, he just unilaterally rescinds the Magna Carta and orders all the earls in the room to submit their armed men to his command, with the casualness of a store manager reminding you to remember to clock out before going home. And everybody seems to be just going along with this, except for Robin, of course. Not even a token argument. And it's not like there isn't time. There's still about an hour and 20 minutes left on this movie. If we're heading into the main plot this quickly, I foresee padding in this film's future. Robin gives a speech that doesn't work, and the new regent just matter-of-factly declares him banished, his wealth confiscated, and if he is still seen in England come tomorrow, he is to be hunted like an outlaw. Again, this is all happening really quick, but it's also really blasé. I'm putting more energy into telling you about the scene than there is in the scene itself. We learn shortly after this, Robin Hood's son is named Robert. Well, this was said earlier, but the way the line was delivered, plus the background noise, it wasn't clear. But here it is. And the people Robin is talking to after his exile has been declared seem to not have much faith in Robert's abilities, still thinking of him as a child. Though I guess there's not much to worry about, as we get a montage of Robert making things difficult for the soldiers announcing the repeal of the Magna Carta. He seems to be a somewhat decent archer already, so what exactly is the arc of this movie going to be then? I kind of feel like they've already closed off most of the obvious paths at this point, and we're not even 12 minutes in. And after the end of the montage, the regent knows who he is now, too. So that's another one. Good lord, how much padding are we in for later? This is not the first time I've watched a movie for this show that feels like it was summarizing itself, but it's been a while. I'd forgotten how weird that felt. Also, the guy playing Regent William sounds like he's trying to imitate Vincent Price. It is not going well. His stilted delivery is not helping. His last line before I paused to write this paragraph in the Google Doc has a really awkward pause between the second to last and last word. William has an advisor / right-hand man type telling him to declare himself king to restore order, and boy howdy does this scene hit different after January 6th, 2021. So the regent kidnaps the boy king, and it amuses me somewhat that the heroes of our movie are somehow fighting for both democracy and monarchy at the same time, and at no point will this contradiction be interrogated in the slightest. Though, to be fair... It's not like we do a good job of that in real life today, is it? Anyway, he does this with his, the boy king's mother, watching, and she does nothing, even though there's nothing to suggest she doesn't actually have any authority over the regent, and is also in stabbing distance of him, and she doesn't do anything because... She does eventually escape the castle with the help of a maid, who was the one who talked her into it in the first place, because if queens are known for anything, it's being told what to do by the help, and early in the escape, they stop to look at something off-screen. What this thing is, or why they stopped to look at it, we never find out. That was pointless, but at least it was brief. Still, I think we are entering the padding stage of the movie. This is what happens when you rush your first act, folks. Oh, and of course they don't wear any dark clothing, even though they are trying to leave in the middle of the night, because, damn it, the studio paid for this movie to be in Technicolor, so they are going to put as much color on the screen as possible. They manage to get out with the help of an aging guard, and we cut to the Regent finding out in the morning and sending out a search party. The search party returns home after the leader says it's getting too dark. Which I could have gone along with had they even attempted to make it look dark, but you can see a brightly lit field fairly clearly through the trees behind them. We see Robert again after this, and by the way, in case you're wondering, he's said 4 words so far. He is supposed to be the main character of this movie, yet the aging guard I mentioned earlier has had more lines than him. Anyway, he stops his horse when he spots a group of ducks and busts out his bow and arrow to, well, hunt for food. He is stopped when a leg sticks out of the brush on the left-hand side of the screen. A human one. And an anachronistically clean-shaven one, so safe to assume this is a woman. And before we even see her face, I'm calling it, this is going to be Robert's love interest. And now that I say that, where's Marion? I don't think she's even been mentioned yet. Anyway, Robert grins like an idiot, because as we find out later, he kind of is an idiot, and goes to investigate. Uses a bird call to get the woman's attention, and boy. This is just, this whole scene, okay. Back in season 5 of this show, I watched mobster movies that were all about 4 or 5 years older than this movie is. Most of the characters in those movies were mobsters, gangsters, criminals. And yet somehow, those characters were less creepy around women than our hero, the son of Robin Hood, is being with this lady here. One full non-action scene with this guy, and I already liked him better when the only thing he was saying was death to tyranny. I mean, he forces a kiss on her while she's trying to get him to put her down. He'd caught her when she nearly fell off a wet log, and grabs her arm when she tries to run away. This is worse than that cringy forced kiss from Slipstream. Ugh. Is this going to be our second act? Watching these two play out the they hate each other before they fall in love cliche before we finally get back to, overthrowing the tyrant who just repealed the Magna Carta and is planning to declare himself king eventually? Fuck, I hope not. Oh, and I didn't make the connection at first because she didn't have the bonnet on, but this is the woman who helped the queen escape. So, there's one plus this scene has. It doesn't give me an extra character to keep track of. Shame about the fact that the guy I'm supposed to be rooting for is laughing when the woman he's trying to force a kiss on nearly falls on a rock trying to get away from him, and I am not exaggerating here. And to make matters worse, she somehow has become okay with this while she is still putting her shoes back on. This movie about the son of Robin Hood is turning into an incel fantasy right in front of me, and it's only just about a third of the way over. So the queen wakes up, they almost get caught, Robert scares off the soldiers after pretending to hand over the queen and Catherine, that's the other woman's name, over to them, yada yada. Robert is a dick to an old woman, and the scene is filmed in a way that suggests that I'm supposed to find this funny. We get a running gag here where the merry men don't recognize Robert at first because they've never seen him as an adult. Robert is a dick to Little John, then he's a dick to Friar Tuck, and I'm starting to sense a theme here. Anyway, Robert manages to get into a sword fight with Friar Tuck, and Robert himself is seeing this alongside Will Scarlet just out of sight of the rest of the merry men, and is doing nothing to stop it. That explains a lot. Skipping ahead a bit, Robin and Robert go to meet the queen, who Robert now knows is the queen, yada yada. They know the king has been kidnapped by the regent, a plan starts being formulated. Robert tries to apologize to Catherine, and it would mean more if he'd done this a lot sooner, and before he knew she was a companion to the queen, yada yada. Alana Dale spies on the regent at the castle. The king refuses to sign a document for the regent because, shock of shocks, dragging someone away from their mother in broad daylight using palace guards doesn't make someone more compliant. The regent arranges the sheriff to have the king die by falling out of a high tower and I am already not enjoying this movie, did it have to add to that by reminding me of the pilot episode of Game of Thrones? Well, at least the regent isn't fucking his sister. Moving on, Alan Adale overheard the plan to kill the Boy King and rides off to inform Robin Hood and the others, and the movie makes sure we see a sizable chunk of that ride, because good pacing is for communists. We get some truly neat archery work at the Merry Men's campsite before Alan Adale reaches them, and honestly, this is the best part of the movie so far. Like, I am well aware that it's all being done with camera tricks, but rule of cool applies. Doubly so when there's been a massive cool deficit up until now. I'll take it where I can get it. Anyway, Alan Adale arrives and alerts them of the regent's plan to kill the king, and Robert has a plan to get into the castle by way of a nun he assisted. Off-screen. All payoff, but no setup. Smooth movie. Smooth. Catherine takes part in the plan as well, which I honestly did not expect, given how the movie has treated her and women in general up to this point. By the way, still no mention of Maid Marian, like, not even obliquely. There's a confession of love, we get a consensual kiss this time. A small group manages to sneak into the castle while the rest wait outside. Things go wrong with the plan, there's some buckling of swash, and it's not really that great. And I'm not even comparing it to modern action scenes, I mean even by 1940s standards. Robert, Catherine, and Alan are captured. Robert requests trial by combat. The regent agrees against advice, but tries to starve Robert for 3 days before the fight. Catherine is in the next cell and is able to get Robert some water and food anyway through a pretty clever trick involving her own water jug and a bit of jury-rigged rope. She was able to get slipped to her. Robin Hood and his people are able to infiltrate before the battle. Robert and the regent's stunt double fight. The regent's right-hand man manages to cut Robert in the back on his left side, which naturally leads to his right arm bleeding. Yada yada, the regent dies, Robert gets knighted, let's get out of here. Random thoughts I had while watching the movie. 1. An amusing coincidence is that the lead hairstylist on this movie is named Helen Hunt. 2. I've seen deconstructions of the Robin Hood story where the writers went out of their way to have Robin be kind of a dick, yet somehow it's this son of Robin Hood, who we are supposed to like, who has me wondering where the hell Will Smith is when you need him. 3. I saw a few spoiler-free negative reviews on the Letterboxd page for this movie just before I started watching, and I wish they had prepared me for how much of a dick the main character would be. Yeah, it occurs to me that 3 could have just been part of 2, but whatever, moving on. 4. It is never more obvious to me just how little chemistry Robert and Catherine have than when she starts to flirt with him a half hour into the movie. She's charming, he's a tool, even when he's trying to be contrite. 5. Apparently Will Scarlet is supposed to be the comic relief character of this movie. Nice of them to wait until it's more than half over to let us know that. 6. So if anyone out there has read the book this is based on, did the book also feel like there was no real point having the main character be Robin Hood's son instead of Robin Hood himself, except just to give the veneer of not being a ripoff of the Errol Flynn movies? 7. Speaking of the book, there are a couple of lines of dialogue in this movie here and there that seem just out of place enough, or that don't really lead to anything, that make me wonder if maybe they were only in the movie because they were in the book. And finally, 8. Seriously, where the fuck is Maid Marian? They don't even mention her. Did Robin reproduce asexually? What the fuck? Final verdict. If only as much effort had been put into the story and acting as it was into the sets, well, some of the sets, and costumes. Oh, and the matte paintings. The matte paintings were good. Credit where credit is due. And also if the hero had been less of a dick. You can find movies even older than this where the male leads show more respect to women. We have started our season of Robin Hood movies with the worst Robin Hood movie I've seen to date. Please tell me we can only go up from here. Let's hope that's the case when we get to the next movie in this set, 1948's The Prince of Thieves. Have fun. Stay safe.